Good morning, Coronation. I hope everyone's having a great day. Yesterday was beautiful. I hope everyone got outside. You were able to walk around. Shh, Carolyn. You were
Sorry.
able to walk around, feel the sun, etc. So we have a very special guest today. I'll be introducing her in a minute. But first, for those of you who are new to the coronation, I know we've had several new people sign up in the last couple of days, actually more than several. We've had many. I want to welcome you. You are our new kings and queens. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what we're trying to do here. So, the coronation was born out of a concern about what happens to society when everyone is isolated and when the anxiety has been ramped up to 11. What can we do for that? How do we get people to not be so fearful? How do we get people to be productive and thus keep their morale up? How do we get people to help other people? These are the purposes of the coronation. This is why we created the quarantine challenge. The quarantine challenge is a series of challenges designed to do exactly that, to help everyone focus out, to help everyone be connected to their friends and their loved ones, and to get through this thing, not just to kind of hold our breaths and curl up into a fetal position until it's over, but to actually be stronger on the other side. That's the idea. This is a time where we could either go into a funk or we can rebuild ourselves. We could rebuild society so we could be stronger on the other side. And that's at least the goal. Now, towards that end, we have our very special guest. So let me speak about Dr. Carolyn for a while. Uh, Carolyn and I have been friends for a long time now, I think a long time. And she's a very special person. She is a board certified obstetrician and gynecologist. She always points out she practices only gynecology. Don't confuse that. And she is also very much in demand all around the world for her rejuvenation procedures that she teaches. They actually bring her to places like Dubai and Spain and everywhere you could think of, so she can teach some of these rejuvenation procedures. She's more than just your average gynecologist. Uh, she is into aesthetic medicine, rejuvenative medicine, restorative medicine, anything you could think of that starts out with the prefix RE, she is into. And she feels very strongly about helping people live a better life. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Carolyn Delucia. And Carolyn, just so everybody knows, she has in the last few months, she's had the release of her book called Ultimate Intimacy. And she's been intimate with hundreds and hundreds of people just in the last few months alone. And based on your Amazon reviews, most of them are thanking you for it. Most of them are very appreciative. So let's bring you on. Good morning.
Good morning, David. Good morning, Coronation. I am blessed to be here, truly, and to be friends with David for all these years. He is an incredible human, as you may have learned. Just doing what he's doing here, dedicated every day to coming online, doing Facebook Lives, which is not easy. It takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of discipline. And if you've listened to any of his little rants, which are fabulous, it's just a way of looking at where we are in this horrible pandemic, which we cannot minimize, especially as a physician. The things I see and the stories I hear, I'm not right on the front line. I would never claim that. I am simply seeing my patients who need to see me at my office every day. But hearing the stories, the loss of life, and the seriousness of this issue cannot be minimized. Yet, what we want to do here is take a second and think about why the universe has put the brakes on. Why is it that the world has come to a standstill? I think it's more than simply the virus and what can we take away from this lesson. It's a moment to sit quietly and listen and then act on what you hear.
Absolutely, and I think the acting part is extremely important. Now let's talk about some of your actions. So you are, like I said, you're a gynecologist. Now, how did you come to the point where you're taking on this whole subject of intimacy? Not a small subject.
No. Well, I will say that it started out with improving the intimate health of my patients. And this is an entire realm and a journey that I've been on for the past 6, 7 years now. And it started out with having non invasive procedures that can be done to improve a woman's ability to remain physically intimate with her partners. So when it comes to where I've gone from there is a matter of evolution and just understanding what intimacy means. You can be intimate with yourself. You can be intimate with others.
Not at the moment.
And well, please. We're being intimate right now, David. And so being intimate has a lot of meaning, and it means sharing your soul, whether it be with yourself or others, feeling safe when doing so and not feeling judged. That's, to me, being intimate.
Okay, got it. Now, Carolyn, what would you say the state of intimacy is currently in our culture?
I think that at this moment, there's a whole range. Those who are isolated, alone, are re exploring, I believe, themselves and trying to reach out and be intimate from a distance with those they love, whether it be family or friends. I think that with this quarantine, people are reaching out for each other in a very special way. I think that seeing the birthday parties that have occurred online, you see people lining up in cul-de-sacs with trunks open, staying at least 6 feet apart, but still sharing in someone's big day. Those are intimate moments. And I think that what we're learning is that that's what's most important in life.
Right. So if you had to track the trend, Carolyn, of our state of intimacy in this country right now, given how much more we've come to appreciate each other, I think that's going on all over the place. Would
Yes,
you say that, but on the other hand, we're isolated. So would you say that the level of intimacy in this country is going up or is it going down?
I think it's had a renewal. I think it's had a rebirth and a return to priority. That's the most critical point in my eyes. I think that one of the major takeaways, I don't care who you are and where you are, I think one of the major takeaways of this pandemic is that intimate relationships are our number one priority.
Got it. Okay, so let me throw a couple of scenarios at you, and let's talk about intimacy in different aspects of it.
Correct.
Okay, so scenario number one, here we have a family of five, the mother, the father, the three children, and they are stuck inside for the most part. So, how can the parents create intimacy among themselves in a situation like that?
All right. So if you're speaking to physical intimacy in the bedroom,
Let's take physical intimacy, perhaps in
okay.
the bedroom.
I think it doesn't make that much of a difference in daily life. I think that spontaneity might be a little bit of a problem under those circumstances with the kids underfoot. However, there's always a lock on the door, and that's what it's for. So I think that whether you entertain the family with a movie and sneak away, or it's when everyone goes to sleep. Is that what you
Okay.
mean?
Yeah, sure. It's a good. There's no wrong here. Okay. So now let's take another scenario. Let's take the people who are isolated, they're by themselves. Maybe they're fearful about leaving, they're in their homes, but they need closeness. This is a fundamental human
Mhm.
need to be close to others,
Yes.
and to be intimate. How how can that be created? So let's give you part A and B. So number one, let's talk about intimacy in terms of just closeness with family or friends. And then number two, let's talk about the possibility of physical intimacy in that scenario.
Well, with video chat, with texting, and being able to take pictures, these things have become very mainstream and are no longer hush hush nor a surprise to anybody. I think one of the cutest stories I saw, however, was a couple who met during the pandemic, hanging out on their rooftops in New York City. One was the gentleman was higher and she was down and a little bit over, and somehow they saw each other, and I think, was sending airplanes at first, some kind of messages physically to her to try to get her attention. And they are now dating. And I think that that's a sign of what's possible, let alone online dating and ways to connect. I think that it does make the walls go down faster as far as communication, and and because of a need. I think that one of the very first signs I read this week of civilization was the first healed femur. That's the leg bone that was broken. And the first sign of civilization was that that person lived. And it meant somebody had to help them get around as cave people. And what I'm saying is that there's an innate need for human contact and caring. And that's a natural part of being human and being civilized. So there's an intimate need.
Right. But it can be concerning that, that might be devolving. That might be going the other way because of this corrosive fear that people are experiencing. You hear stories about caregivers and people being told not to give mouth to mouth resuscitation, or people being afraid to take someone to the hospital who's in obvious need. Have you heard these things? And what would you say to people about reaching out to help your fellow man?
I think that, first of all, mouth to mouth resuscitation has sort of gone to the wayside over the past couple of years. Chest compressions are sufficient. And if you're wearing a
Yeah, but that's a
mask,
nerdy answer. That's not a
sorry.
yeah,
However,
but that still involves touching, right?
yes, but I still don't think that, especially if it's a loved one, no one's going to let that fear come into play. I think that being close to somebody will still override the selfish fears.
Okay, so you're pretty hopeful about this whole thing.
I absolutely am. I know we're going to come out of this better than we ever were.
Got it. And what would be, as a doctor, so you are an expert in diagnosing and then giving a prescription. So what would be
For
your
women.
prescription, at least for women, right? But
Hmm.
now I'm giving you power because remember, this is the coronation. Thus, you are a queen at this moment.
Oh, I should wear a crown.
Yeah, you're always a queen. So what would be your prescription for society to make sure that we're able to raise our level of intimacy as a society?
Number one of the takeaways is to realize the importance of intimacy, being genuine, and showing a natural human caring. And I think that just being aware and making it a priority again, not work, not money, but quality time with those that we care about is of the essence. I know my best friends, we've been doing video happy hours and chats, and we laugh till our ribs hurt. And that's really important and renewing. And the first time we did it, one of our husbands in the background said, the first few minutes, there wasn't as much laughter as usual. And we were sharing the impact of our situation. But then we got back to our goofy selves and really enjoyed seeing each other and being with each other. And that's really the gist of all of this.
Right. Now, in that situation, Carolyn, were you personally able to overcome the distance? Was it as satisfying as it would have been otherwise?
Almost.
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 Well, we got to take that right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that story you told before about that couple on the roof. I have not heard that, but
Oh,
yeah, it's sort of a David and Bathsheba story, right? If I remember
yeah.
correctly, he saw her bathing on the roof and he fell in love
Yes.
at that moment. So, can you tell me any more about that? That's really fascinating.
Well, eventually they have dates. They set up tables outside where they can see each other. Inside, they have meals together. They watch movies together. They have popcorn together, all remotely.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
So they've found a way to overcome the distance. So and now this almost gets into a spiritual thing. I mean, intimacy means familiarity, it means closeness, and yet
yes,
we're forced to distance. Can we overcome just by force of will or by connecting, with a higher power or our higher selves? Can we overcome that physical distance?
100% my opinion. And I think that's a real connection more than simply physical. The physical will come naturally, in my opinion.
Got it. And what do you see? So this obviously is very, very weird, right? What do
Yeah,
you eventually the restrictions are going to be eased, but I don't think it's going to be like, Victory in Europe Day where everyone runs out into the street and people are kissing in Times Square. So what do you see happening at the end of this? Will people still be cautious? Will people embrace each other? How do you think that's going to turn out?
well, we can take a peek at some of the states right now who are relaxing some of their rules, and unfortunately, there's a mix. There are people who immediately are not wearing masks and running around the streets as if none of this ever happened, and then there will be those of us who will continue to be cautious and aware that it's still an unknown. We just don't know. We don't know if the virus is going to come back. We don't know if we've seen the full extent of it. I think that what will help us all is adequate testing. Unfortunately, it's still lacking.
Right.
And it's now there's question of the quality of the antibody testing. There's over 14 different tests, and all of that has to be fine tuned. And
Right.
when we get that fine tuned and people can be more comfortable, I think life will be slowly returning to a new but healthy norm with enough intimacy that we don't all go crazy.
I think you're right. And by the way, for anyone who's just joining us, I'm here with Dr. Carolyn Delucia MD. We're talking about intimacy in all of its different varieties and manifestations, and it's a really interesting conversation. So if you're just joining us, this is Dr. Delucia. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead and post them. So again, Carolyn's background is in rejuvenative medicine, restorative medicine, and gynecology. So she is an expert in some of these things. She is well practiced in many procedures that are able to assist with female intimacy. And as a result of that, she's been able to journey from the female genitalia up to the mind, which is where all this stuff takes place. Is that correct?
Well, let's not say all.
Not all. Okay, fair enough. But much of it. So
Yes.
let's talk about that regarding physical intimacy and the mind. Why is that so powerful and why is that necessary? Why can't it be disconnected?
Because we are human and it takes three at least systems in our body to be physically intimate. It takes our mind, it takes our endocrinological system, our nervous system, our circulatory system, and our genital system. So there are, and our erogenous zones. I can go on and on. It's slightly complicated. So I think that all of those pieces have to come together.
Okay, so my question for you now is since your expertise, at least initially, was in focusing on the genitalia and the physical, the physiological, that's what you were trained for. How are you able to assist your patients with the mental aspect of intimacy?
Well, I think that it's a natural combination and it is a discussion. And everything starts when you're a physician in this field with relationship. So you have to get to know your patient. And that woman has to feel safe to talk about what is happening in her intimate life. And if it's originating from an emotional standpoint, it has to be addressed. And of course, there are experts in this area that you can refer to. I don't claim to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I can appropriately guide if it's a major issue in their lives. There are, of course, physical conditions that need to be addressed, whether it be uh, discomfort because of menopause. Women go through changes that are agonizing. And for the men listening, it no longer is pleasurable if a woman is in the midst of her menopause and it's hurting her. It'll feel like a round hairbrush instead of anatomy. So it's excruciating. Be sensitive to it and listen when she says that it's uncomfortable, but be aware that there's help and that may be something she doesn't even know, which is why I wrote my little book, is to help bring awareness that nobody has to suffer and intimacy can continue in a very healthy fashion when each one or any one of these areas are addressed.
Right. Carolyn, so you said something that's very interesting, and it's obviously 100% correct. So you talked about, the need to feel safe. And
Mhm.
the need to feel safe and secure is obviously going to be a block for intimacy of any kind. Now, right now, people don't necessarily feel safe overall. So how does one overcome that? How does one overcome that insecurity so that they can be vulnerable and to create closer relationships?
I think it's a matter of communication. 100%. I don't think there's anything stronger than communication. Talking about it, being open and sharing. When one person is not feeling listened to or heard or appreciated, there will be no intimacy.
Got it. Okay, good. So last question, Carolyn. And by the way, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
So last question is, so what have you learned that maybe nobody else in the world knows about this entire subject of intimacy?
um, I think I don't think it's any secret. Nothing I know is a big secret. I think that the most important aspect of intimacy is the ripple effect. And I think that people may not be paying attention to that aspect of intimacy. And that's one of my messages is the ripple effect. So what I'm talking about is how a healthy, intimate relationship, whether it be, once again, with yourself or with a partner, it has an effect on your overall life. And that means that if you feel satisfied in an intimate way, it impacts your everyday life, your job, your interaction with others, your interaction with a boss, your interaction with employees. If you feel intimately satisfied as a human, it affects your family life, and your children will know that you have a satisfying relationship. And when they see that, they thrive. So the ripple is not only for yourself, but it's for those you care about.
Got it. So be intimate for the benefit of everyone.
That's correct.
Okay. So words of wisdom. Carolyn, again, thank you for coming on and for being a part of the coronation. I think
My pleasure.
everybody has been elevated as a result of this conversation, which is ultimately what we're trying to do. And if we could create greater and deeper connection, we'll put it this way: if we can create greater and deeper connections on the other side of this, then we might be in some trouble. But the message, one of the messages that we're trying to impart to people is that there is a choice. In every step of this, there's a choice. We could curl up into the fetal position, or we can grow and we can expand. And I'm not talking in the way that I'm likely to expand after eating that pizza that I had yesterday. I just mean as human beings, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we do have the ability to do that. And actually, if there is a gift here, we've been given the gift of time and the gift of reflection to be able to do that. And so I
Exactly.
want everyone to take advantage of it. And I'm fond of quoting Viktor Frankl. I've done this many times, but he said that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space there's choice, and that's where we find our power. So we all have a choice in this situation, and we pray that everyone chooses to thrive right now and beyond.
Correct. I'm going to post a little video to the coronation that I had posted serendipitously a year ago on Facebook. And it refers to coming out of challenging situations as a choice. And it takes into account 3 pots of boiling water, and in one pot, you put a potato, in the other pot, 2 eggs, and in the other pot, some coffee beans. And at the end of 20 minutes, you see what you get. In the first pot, now, mind you, each different characteristic here had its option of changing in the water. The potato came out soft and mushy, but had gone in hard. The egg came out hard, having gone in with a very fragile shell, and could have broken and been splattered. The coffee chose to change and the beans turned into a cup of coffee and came out better. So we can all make a choice of how we're going to come out of this situation.
Got it. So let's be coffee then.
There you go.
All right, Carolyn, thank you
Cheers.
again. And for those of you who are listening now, we are going to be premiering actually a music video here. I think that's going to be on Wednesday. It's going to be hilarious. You're going to just watching it will take you to a different state of pleasure and enjoyment, and it will get you out of the day-to-day grind. All right. So again, Carolyn, Dr. Delucia, thank you. And I hope
Thank you,
everyone has
David.
a fantastic day. Take care.
Bye.